What would you do if you discovered that your family had been stealing your inheritance for 20 years while treating you like hired help? And what if the accident that nearly killed you was actually the best thing that ever happened to you? This is the story of how I lost everything I thought I wanted and found everything I actually needed. But first, let me tell you about the night I bled on my own kitchen floor while my family blamed me for existing. You know that feeling when you're invisible in your own family, when you work yourself to the bone, but somehow you're still never enough. Well, let me tell you about Ella Carter. And trust me, this story is going to hit you right in the gut. Ella was 26, working as an ICU nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. Every single day, she was literally saving lives, holding the hands of dying patients, comforting families in their darkest moments. But here's the thing that'll make your blood boil. At home, she was treated like she was nobody. Picture this: 5:30 a.m. Ella's alarm goes off. She's already been up for an hour, couldn't sleep because her stepmother Beth had been texting her nonstop about preparations for this weekend. Not good morning texts, not how are you texts, just demands. Clean this by that, make sure everything's perfect because Kara's fiance is coming over. Kara. Oh, where do I even start with Kara, Ella's 24-year-old stepsister who had never worked a day in her life but somehow always had the latest designer bags, the perfect manicures, and now a rich fiancé named Trevor who worked in finance. While Ella was pulling 12-hour shifts dealing with life and death situations, Kara was posting Instagram stories from expensive brunches and shopping sprees. But here's what really gets me. Beth, Ella's stepmother, had married Ella's father, Michael, when Ella was just 8 years old. Michael was this amazing man, kind, hardworking, but he traveled constantly for his engineering job. He'd send money home religiously, made sure his family was taken care of. But Beth, she had other priorities. Every conversation with Beth somehow circled back to Kara's success, Kara's achievements, Kara's perfect life. Oh, Trevor's taking Kara to Martha's Vineyard this weekend. Did you see the ring Trevor bought Kara? It's 3 carats. Kara's so lucky to have found someone who can provide for her properly. And Ella was expected to be grateful. Grateful for a roof over her head. Grateful that Beth tolerated her presence. Grateful that she wasn't kicked out when she turned 18. So that Thursday morning, as Ella was getting ready for another exhausting shift, her phone buzzes. Beth, of course. Ella, I need you to deep clean the entire house this weekend. Trevor's parents are joining us for dinner Sunday and everything needs to be spotless. Also, can you handle the grocery shopping? I've made a list. Oh, and pick up flowers for the dining room. Something expensive looking. No, please. No, thank you. Just expectations. Ella stared at her phone, still in her scrubs from the night before. She hadn't even had coffee yet, and already her weekend was being planned for her. But you know what she did? She typed back, "Sure, Mom, I'll take care of it." Because that's what Ella always did. She took care of it. At the hospital, though, things were different. Ella wasn't invisible there. She was respected, valued, needed. Her colleagues actually saw her, especially Evan. Evan Rodriguez was a paramedic who'd been bringing patients to their ICU for about 6 months now. Tall, dark hair, these incredibly kind brown eyes that seemed to really see people. Not just patients, but everyone he interacted with. And lately, Ella had noticed he always seemed to linger a little longer when he brought patients to her unit. "Morning, Ella," he'd say, and his smile was genuine. Not the polite, obligatory smile she got at home. This was different. This was warm. "How's your day going?" he'd ask, and he actually waited for an answer. When she said she was tired, he'd bring her coffee. When she mentioned she was stressed, he'd crack a joke to make her laugh. Small things, but they meant everything to someone who was used to being an afterthought. But Ella had built walls. Years of being second best, second priority, second choice had taught her not to expect too much from people. So when Evan asked if she wanted to grab dinner after their shift, she always had an excuse. "I have to help my family with something," she'd say, and it was always true. That particular week, though, something felt different. The pressure at home was mounting. Beth's texts were becoming more frequent, more demanding. Have you bought the flowers yet? Did you remember to get the good wine? Make sure you vacuum under all the furniture. And then came the text that made Ella's stomach drop. Oh, and Ella Trevor's parents are very particular about appearances. Maybe you could do something with your hair, and perhaps buy a nicer dress for Sunday dinner. Nothing too expensive, but something that doesn't scream hospital worker. Ella read that message 3 times standing in the hospital break room. Something that doesn't scream hospital worker. As if saving lives was something to be ashamed of. As if her career, her calling her daily sacrifice, was somehow embarrassing to the family. Evan walked into the break room just as Ella was staring at her phone, and he immediately noticed something was off. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice soft with genuine concern. Ella looked up, and for a moment she almost told him everything, almost explained how she felt like a servant in her own home, how she was tired of being invisible, how she was starting to wonder if this was all her life would ever be. But instead, she did what she always did. She smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm fine, just family stuff." Evan studied her face for a moment, and Ella could tell he wanted to push, wanted to ask more questions. But he respected her boundaries. That's the kind of man he was. "Well, if you ever want to talk about family stuff, I'm a pretty good listener," he said, "and I make excellent pancakes in case that sweetens the deal." Ella actually laughed at that, the first genuine laugh she'd had all week. But then her phone buzzed again. Beth. Again. "I really should go," Ella said, gathering her things. "Long weekend ahead." As she walked away, Ella didn't see the way Evan watched her leave, the concern in his eyes, or the way his hands clenched into fists when he saw how her shoulders sagged under the weight of whatever she was carrying. Because here's the thing about people like Ella. They're so used to being strong for everyone else that they forget they deserve someone to be strong for them too. And Beth. Well, Beth was about to push things too far. Because that Friday afternoon, when Ella dragged herself home after a particularly brutal shift where she'd lost a patient, Beth was waiting with the longest to-do list Ella had ever seen. "I've been thinking," Beth said, not even looking up from her magazine as Ella walked through the door, still in her scrubs, exhaustion written all over her face. "This dinner Sunday is really important for Kara's future. Trevor's father owns 3 restaurants in the Back Bay, and his mother sits on the board of several charities. They need to see that we're the kind of family they want to be associated with." Ella just stood there, keys still in her hand, wondering when "we" had started meaning everyone except her. "So, I've made some adjustments to our weekend plans," Beth continued, finally looking up with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I need you to handle everything on this list by Saturday evening. Kara and I are getting our hair and nails done tomorrow, and we'll need the whole day for that." Ella took the list, and as she read it, something inside her chest started to crack. Deep clean entire house top to bottom. Shop for dinner for 8 people. Pick up dry cleaning. Iron all table linens. Polish all silverware. Arrange flowers in every room. Set up the guest room for Trevor's parents who were staying the night. At the bottom of the list, in Beth's perfect handwriting. "And please try to stay out of sight during the dinner. We don't want to overwhelm them with too many people." That's when Ella realized she wasn't just invisible in this family. She was actively being erased. And somewhere across town, Evan was finishing his shift, thinking about the sadness he'd seen in Ella's eyes, wondering if there was anything he could do to help the woman who spent her days helping everyone else. Saturday morning came way too early for Ella. 5 a.m. to be exact. While normal people were sleeping in on their day off, Ella was already standing in the kitchen, staring at that impossible list Beth had given her. "You want to know what rock bottom feels like? It's scrubbing your stepmother's toilet at sunrise, while she sleeps peacefully upstairs, dreaming about her daughter's perfect life. It's knowing you have 16 hours to transform a house into something worthy of people who wouldn't give you a second glance." Ella started with the living room. Every cushion removed, every surface, dusted, every corner vacuumed. The house was already clean. Ella kept it that way because she couldn't stand the criticism that came with anything less than perfect. But Beth's standards for a company clean were something else entirely. As she was moving furniture to vacuum underneath, her phone rang. Evan's name lit up the screen, and for just a moment, Ella's heart did this little skip. But then she looked around at the chaos at the clock, showing it was barely 7 a.m., and she let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, a text. "Hey, I know it's early, but I'm at this amazing farmer's market, and they have those sunflowers you mentioned loving. Want me to grab some for you?" Ella stared at that text, holding her phone with hands that were already red and raw from cleaning supplies. Evan remembered that she loved sunflowers. She'd mentioned it once months ago when they'd walked past the hospital's garden together. Such a small detail, but he'd held on to it. She started typing, "That's so sweet of you, but I can't today. Family obligations." Then she deleted it and wrote, "Thanks, but I'm busy today." Then she deleted that too and just wrote, "Can't today. Sorry." Esther, because how do you explain to someone like Evan, someone thoughtful and kind, that you're spending your Saturday being a live-in servant? How do you tell him that your family sees you as free labor, not a daughter or sister? By noon, Ella had cleaned 3 bathrooms, reorganized 2 closets, and was working on the kitchen when Beth finally came downstairs, perfectly dressed for her spa day with Kara. "Oh, good. You're making progress," Beth said, pouring herself coffee from the pot Ella had made hours earlier. "Don't forget the guest bathroom needs fresh towels, and make sure you get the expensive soap from Nordstrom. Trevor's mother is very particular about details." Ella was on her hands and knees scrubbing the baseboards when she looked up and asked, "Mom, do you think maybe I could join you guys for dinner tomorrow? I mean, I'll have done all the work to make it happen, and I'd love to meet Trevor's parents." The silence that followed was deafening. Beth set down her coffee cup with just a little too much force, and Ella immediately knew she'd overstepped. "Ella, honey," Beth said, and that tone, oh, that tone was poison wrapped in silk. "Tomorrow is about Kara's future. This is a very important moment for her, and we need everything to be perfect. Having too many people at the table might make things feel crowded, overwhelming. You understand." What Ella understood was that she wasn't people. She was furniture. Useful when needed, invisible when convenient. "Of course," Ella said, turning back to the baseboards. "I understand." "I knew you would," Beth said, already walking away. "Oh, and the flowers need to be arranged by 5. Kara wants to post pictures before dinner, and the lighting is better in the afternoon." After Beth left for her spa day, Ella threw herself into the work with an intensity that bordered on manic. Scrub harder, clean, deeper, make everything perfect, so maybe she'd be worthy of existing in this house. Her phone buzzed again around 2 p.m. Another text from Evan. "Hope your family stuff is going okay. If you need a break, I'm making tacos tonight. Standing invitation." Ella's eyes filled with tears so fast, it caught her off guard. Someone was thinking about her. Someone wanted her company, not her labor. Someone was offering to feed her instead of expecting her to feed everyone else. But she was elbow deep in silver polish, trying to make 100-year-old family heirlooms shine for people who wouldn't even acknowledge her presence tomorrow. She texted back, "Thanks, but really busy. Have fun with the tacos." What she didn't text was, "I wish I could. I wish I could drop everything and run to your kitchen and eat tacos and laugh and feel human again." By 4 p.m., Ella was working on the flower arrangements, and this is where things started to go sideways. She'd bought beautiful white roses, baby's breath, and eucalyptus, the kind of elegant, understated arrangements she'd seen in magazines. But as she was trimming the stems, her phone rang. Kara, calling from the nail salon, her voice high with excitement and what sounded like champagne. "Ella, Mom told me you're doing the flowers. Listen, I just saw the most gorgeous arrangement on Pinterest, and I absolutely need you to recreate it. It's got these huge white peonies and lots of gold accents. Very bougie, very expensive looking." Ella looked at the roses she'd already started arranging. "Kara, I already bought the flowers. They're really beautiful, and oh no, Those sound boring. This is for Trevor's parents, Ella. They're used to the best of everything. Can you run out and get the peonies? There's a fancy florist in Back Bay that should have them. Ella glanced at the clock. The fancy florist would be closing soon, and she still had 3 rooms to vacuum, a bathroom to deep clean, and dinner to figure out for herself since she obviously wasn't invited to join the family meal. Kara, I don't think I have time to... Ella. Kara's voice turned sharp, losing all pretense of sisterly sweetness. This is important. This could literally change my entire future. Trevor's dad is thinking about opening another restaurant, and if his parents like our family, Trevor might get to manage it. Do you understand what that means for us? For us. As if Ella would see a single benefit from Kara's success. I'll see what I can do, Ella said, because what else could she say? You're the best, Kara chirped back to fake sweetness. Oh, and Mom wants you to make that salmon recipe for our dinner tonight? The one with the fancy sauce. We're eating at 8. The line went dead, and Ella stood there in the dining room surrounded by half-finished flower arrangements, realizing she'd just been assigned to cook dinner for the family that had excluded her from tomorrow's meal. The florist run was a nightmare. Saturday afternoon traffic in Boston, trying to find parking, explaining to a snooty saleswoman exactly what she needed while watching her savings account take another hit. By the time she got home with the peonies, it was almost 7 and she still had so much to do. That's when Evan called again. Hey. His voice was warm through the phone, and Ella realized she was pathetically grateful just to hear someone speak to her kindly. I know you said you're busy, but I'm worried about you. You sound stressed. Ella was standing in the kitchen, fish thawing on the counter, flowers wilting on the table, vacuum cleaner still plugged in from her afternoon sprint through the upstairs. She was tired in a way that went bone deep, and something about Evan's gentle concern almost broke her. I'm okay, she said, but her voice cracked on the words. Ella, you don't sound okay. When's the last time you ate something? Or sat down? She couldn't remember. Breakfast. Had she eaten breakfast? She'd made coffee for Beth, but had she eaten anything herself? I'm fine, Evan. Really, I just have a lot to get done before tomorrow. What's tomorrow? And there it was, the question that would force her to admit that her family was having this important dinner, this potential life-changing meal, and she wasn't invited, that she was good enough to prepare for it, but not good enough to participate in it. Just family stuff, she said again, that catch-all phrase that explained nothing and everything. Ella, Evan's voice was soft, careful. I know we don't know each other that well yet, but I care about you, and something feels off. If you need help with anything at all, I'm here. For a moment, Ella almost said yes, almost asked him to come over and help her cook dinner for people who treated her like hired help, almost admitted that she was drowning in obligations and expectations and hadn't felt like a real person in years. But then she heard Beth's car in the driveway, heard Kara's laughter echoing through the evening air, and she remembered her place in this family. Thanks, Evan, but I really do have it handled. I should go. Okay, he said, but she could hear the disappointment. Just take care of yourself, all right? You matter. You matter. When was the last time someone had said that to her? The next few hours were a blur of controlled chaos. Cooking salmon, while arranging flowers, while Beth critiqued everything from the fold of the napkins to the way Ella had polished the wine glasses. These peonies are lovely, Beth admitted grudgingly, but the gold accents look a little sparse. Can you add more? The sauce smells good, but make sure it's not too lemony. Trevor's father doesn't like citrus. Did you remember to iron the good tablecloth? Not the everyday one, the good one from the linen closet. By 10 p.m., Ella was running on fumes and stubbornness. The family had finished their salmon dinner, which they'd praised naturally since it was delicious, and now they were in the living room planning tomorrow's timeline while Ella cleaned up the kitchen. That's when it happened, the moment that would change everything. Ella was washing the crystal wine glasses, the expensive ones that only came out for special occasions, when her exhausted hands finally betrayed her. The glass slipped shattered in the sink, and a jagged piece sliced across her palm. The cut was deep, immediate, and bloody. Really bloody. Ella gasped, grabbing a dish towel to wrap around her hand, but the white cloth turned red almost instantly. "What was that noise?" Beth called from the living room. "I cut myself," Ella called back, trying to keep the pain out of her voice. "I'm okay. Just need to... You didn't break anything important, did you?" Beth's voice was sharp with concern, but not for Ella, for the glassware. "One of the wine glasses," Ella admitted, and the silence that followed was loaded with accusation. Beth appeared in the kitchen doorway, took one look at the broken glass in the sink, and the blood seeping through the towel around Ella's hand, and her face went through several expressions: annoyance, frustration, and finally cold disappointment. "Ella, those glasses are part of a set. They're irreplaceable." "How could you be so careless?" Ella stared at her stepmother, blood slowly dripping from her wrapped hand onto the kitchen floor she'd mopped twice that day, and something inside her finally snapped. Not broke, not shattered, just snapped, like a rubber band stretched too far. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I'll replace it." "With what money?" Beth's voice was getting sharper. "Those glasses cost more than you make in a week. This is exactly why we can't have nice things when you're around." "When you're around," as if Ella was a guest who'd overstayed her welcome, not a daughter who'd lived in this house for 18 years. "I said, I'm sorry." Ella's voice was still quiet, but there was something different in it now. Something that made Beth's eyes narrow. "Sorry doesn't fix broken crystal, Ella, and tomorrow is too important for this kind of carelessness. I think it's best if you just stay in your room during the dinner. We can't risk any more accidents." Stay in your room. Like a child being punished, like a servant being dismissed. Ella nodded, still holding her bleeding hand, still standing in the kitchen. She'd spent the entire day cleaning. "Okay, I'll stay in my room." "Good. Now, clean up this mess and bandage that cut. And be quiet about it. Kara's trying to relax before tomorrow." Beth walked away, leaving Ella alone with broken glass and the growing realization that she'd spent 26 years of her life trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it. As she carefully picked glass shards out of the sink, wrapping her cut hand properly, cleaning up the blood from the floor, Ella's phone buzzed one more time. "Evan, just wanted to say goodnight. Hope tomorrow goes well for you." And for the first time all day, Ella started to cry. Not from the cut, not from exhaustion, but from the strange, overwhelming realization that somewhere in this city, there was a man who thought about her before he went to sleep. A man who had no idea that the woman he cared about was spending her Saturday night cleaning up her own blood while being blamed for existing. But that was all about to change. Because sometimes rock bottom isn't where you end up. Sometimes it's where you finally find the strength to push back. You know what's funny about rock bottom? You think you've hit it, and then life says, "Hold my beer," and drops you through the floor. Sunday morning arrived like a slap in the face. Ella woke up at 6 a.m. not because of an alarm, but because her bandaged hand was throbbing. The cut from the wine glass was deeper than she'd initially thought, and she probably should have gotten stitches. But who had time for the emergency room when there was a perfect family dinner to orchestrate? Downstairs, the house looked like something out of a magazine. Every surface gleamed, every flower was perfectly arranged, every detail exactly as Beth had demanded. It was beautiful, really. The kind of beautiful that comes from 18 hours of backbreaking work and the sacrifice of one person's weekend. Their rest, their dignity. Ella made coffee, started preparing the elaborate brunch Beth had planned for Trevor's parents, and tried to ignore the way her hand sent sharp pains up her arm every time she gripped something. She'd wrapped it tightly, taken some ibuprofen, and told herself she could handle it. Because that's what Ella always did. She handled it. Around 9 a.m., her phone rang. The hospital. They were short-staffed in the ICU and desperately needed someone to cover a double shift. Normally, Ella would have said no. She was exhausted, injured, and technically it was her day off. But as she looked around the perfect house that she wasn't allowed to enjoy, listening to Beth and Kara's laughter upstairs, as they got ready for their important day, something made her say yes. I'll be there in an hour, she told the charge nurse. Maybe it was spite, maybe it was self-preservation, or maybe she just needed to be somewhere where she mattered, where her presence was valued instead of tolerated. She left a note on the kitchen counter, called into work. Emergency coverage needed. Everything's ready for tonight. Hope dinner goes well. What she didn't write was, I hope you realize someday that you lost the best thing in your lives because you were too blind to see it. At the hospital, Ella threw herself into work with an intensity that worried her colleagues. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman in bed, 3 needed constant monitoring. Mr. Chen was recovering from surgery and required complex medication management. Baby Sophia, just 6 months old, was fighting off pneumonia with the determination of someone much older. Ella, honey, when's the last time you took a break? Asked Janet, the head nurse who'd been working ICU for 30 years and had seen everything. I'm fine, Ella said, adjusting Mr. Chen's IV drip with her good hand while trying to hide how much her injured hand was shaking. That's what they all say, right before they collapse, Janet replied, studying Ella's face with the sharp eyes of someone who'd been taking care of people longer than Ella had been alive. You look like hell, sweetheart. And what happened to your hand? Kitchen accident. Really, I'm okay. But she wasn't okay. By hour 6 of her shift, Ella was running on caffeine and stubbornness. Her hand was bleeding through the bandage. She hadn't eaten anything substantial in over 24 hours, and she was starting to feel lightheaded. Her phone buzzed occasionally throughout the day. Updates from home about the perfect family dinner she was missing. Beth, Trevor's parents are lovely, such sophisticated people. Kara OMG, Mrs. Whitmore complimented the flowers. She said they were the most elegant arrangements she'd seen outside of the Four Seasons. No mention of who had arranged those flowers. No acknowledgement that Ella's bleeding hands had created the beauty they were now taking credit for. Around 7 p.m., Evan appeared in the ICU. He wasn't scheduled to work, but he'd heard through the hospital grapevine that Ella had picked up a double shift. Hey, he said, approaching her station with that gentle smile that always made her heart skip. Heard you were here. How are you holding up? Ella was in the middle of checking on baby Sophia, whose condition had been improving throughout the day, when she looked up and saw genuine concern in Evan's eyes. Not obligation, not duty, but real honest worry for her well-being. I'm good, she said automatically, but her voice cracked slightly. Evan stepped closer and his expression grew more serious. Ella, you're pale as a sheet. You've got dark circles under your eyes and your hand is bleeding through that bandage. When's the last time you ate something? She couldn't remember. Yesterday's breakfast, the day before. I grabbed a granola bar earlier, she lied. Show me your hand. Evan, I'm fine, really. Show me your hand, Ella. Something in his voice, the quiet authority of a medical professional who'd seen too many people ignore serious injuries, made her comply. She unwrapped the bandage and they both stared at the deep gash that should have been stitched hours ago. It was still bleeding the edges, swollen and angry. Jesus, Ella, this needs proper medical attention. How did this happen? Broke a wine glass while cleaning up dinner last night. Last night, you've been working a double shift with an untreated laceration. When he put it like that, it sounded pretty stupid. I couldn't leave my patients, she said defensively. And who's taking care of you? His voice was soft, but there was an edge to it. Who's making sure you're okay? That question hit her like a physical blow. Who was taking care of her? The answer was nobody. For 26 years, the answer had been nobody. I take care of myself, she whispered. That's not how it's supposed to work, Ella. People who care about you are supposed to help carry the load. People who care about you. The concept felt foreign, impossible. I really should get back to my patients, she said, starting to rewrap her hand. Not yet. We're getting that properly cleaned and bandaged first. And you're eating something. Real food, not a granola bar you didn't actually eat. For the next 20 minutes, Evan tenderly cleaned and properly dressed her wound, his hands gentle but sure. He made her sit in the break room and eat a sandwich from the cafeteria, watched to make sure she actually consumed it, brought her water, and insisted she drink the whole glass. Better, he asked when she'd finished eating. Much. Thank you. And she meant it. When was the last time someone had taken care of her like this? Fed her worried about her injuries, made sure she was okay. Ella, Evan said carefully, I know it's not my place, but the way you're pushing yourself, the way you're ignoring your own needs, it's not sustainable. And it's not normal. Family shouldn't make you feel like you have to choose between their approval and your own well-being. She opened her mouth to defend them, to make excuses, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. I should finish my shift, she said instead. Okay, but I'm staying until you're done. Someone needs to make sure you don't pass out on the job. Evan, you don't have to. I want to. Let me want to take care of you, Ella. Let someone care about what happens to you. By midnight, Ella's shift was finally over. She was exhausted beyond description, emotionally drained, and her hand was throbbing despite Evan's careful attention. But for the first time in days, she felt human, seen, valued. Come on, Evan said, helping her gather her things. I'm driving you home. I have my car, and you're in no condition to drive. We'll get your car tomorrow. The ride to her house was quiet, comfortable in a way that Ella wasn't used to. Evan didn't need to fill the silence with chatter. He just drove occasionally, glancing over to make sure she was okay, his presence steady and reassuring. When they pulled into her driveway, every light in the house was on. Through the windows, Ella could see people moving around, hear the faint sound of laughter and conversation. The dinner party was still going strong at midnight. Sounds like quite a party, Evan observed neutrally. Yeah, important family dinner, business connections. And you weren't invited. The simple way he asked it without judgment, but with clear confusion, made Ella realize how insane the situation really was. I helped prepare everything, but the actual dinner was family only. Well, family and Trevor's parents. Evan was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Ella, your family. You're their daughter, their sister. How is a dinner in your own home not for you? She didn't have an answer for that. Or rather, she had an answer, but saying it out loud would make it real that she wasn't really family to them. She was just convenient. Thank you for driving me home, she said, reaching for the door handle, and for taking care of my hand, and for making me eat. I really appreciate it. Ella, his voice stopped her. You deserve better than this. You know that, right? She looked at him, this kind man who'd spent his evening off making sure she was okay, and felt something crack open in her chest. I should go in, she whispered. Should I walk you to the door? No, they'll be busy with their guests. I'll just go in the back. Go in the back, like hired help, like someone who didn't belong in the front of her own house. Evan watched her walk to the back door, watched her let herself into her own home like a stranger, and something in his expression shifted, hardened. Inside, Ella could hear the dinner party winding down, voices saying goodbyes, compliments about the wonderful evening, the beautiful home, the perfect family. She climbed the back stairs to her room, avoiding the main areas where the guests might see her in her wrinkled scrubs, exhausted and injured. She was almost to her room when she heard Kara's voice carrying up the stairs. Oh, Ella, she's not really part of the family. More like, well, Dad's first wife died and then he married Mom, but Ella was just part of the package, you know. She's useful for things like this, but she keeps to herself mostly. Very antisocial. Antisocial. Not excluded, not unwelcome, antisocial. Ella stood on the stairs listening to her stepsister rewrite her entire existence for strangers, and felt something die inside her chest. Some last, stubborn hope that maybe things could change. Maybe they did love her. Maybe she just needed to try harder. She made it to her room, closed the door quietly, and sat on her bed in the dark. Her phone buzzed. Evan, got home safe. Sleep well. See you tomorrow. She stared at the text for a long time, this simple kindness from someone who barely knew her, but treated her with more respect than her own family had in years. She was too tired to respond, too tired to think, too tired to feel. Ella fell asleep in her scrubs, on top of the covers, her bandaged hand clutched against her chest. She slept through the guests leaving, through the family's post-dinner analysis of the evening, through Beth and Kara's excited planning of the future that Ella had helped create but would never be part of. And she slept through the first few rings of her alarm Monday morning. When she finally woke up, she was running late for her shift. Really late. She grabbed her keys, threw on a jacket over yesterday's scrubs, and rushed out to her car. Her hand was stiff and sore. Her head was pounding from exhaustion, and she was trying to calculate how fast she could drive and still be safe when it happened. The intersection of Commonwealth and Berkeley, a place she'd driven through hundreds of times. But this morning she was tired, distracted, worried about being late, and she didn't see the delivery truck running the red light until it was too late. The impact was devastating. Ella's small Honda was no match for a fully loaded delivery truck. The car crumpled like paper glass, exploded inward, and Ella's world went dark as her head struck the driver's side window. The irony wasn't lost on the universe. Ella Carter, who spent her life saving other people, was now the one who needed saving. The paramedics who responded to the scene were from Evans Station. When they saw the name on her hospital ID badge, when they realized who was trapped in the wreckage, the lead paramedic immediately radioed ahead. "We've got Ella Carter from Mass General ICU, critical condition, ETA 8 minutes. At the hospital, word spread quickly. Ella was one of their own, and the entire ICU team mobilized. But it was Evan who went completely white when he heard the news. Evan, who was waiting in the trauma bay when they brought her in. Evan, whose hands were shaking as he helped transfer her to the bed. "Is there family we should call?" the trauma doctor asked. Evan looked down at Ella's unconscious form, at the woman who'd sacrificed everything for a family that didn't even claim her, and felt rage build in his chest. "I'll handle the family notifications," he said. The injuries were serious. Traumatic brain injury, internal bleeding, multiple fractures. She was rushed into surgery while Evan called the number listed as her emergency contact. Beth answered on the fourth ring, sounding irritated. "Hello, Mrs. Carter. This is Evan Rodriguez from Massachusetts General Hospital. I'm calling about Ella." "Oh, is she not coming into work today? Because she didn't say anything about calling in sick, and we have the Whitmores staying for breakfast. She's supposed to be here to help serve." Evan gripped the phone tighter. "Ma'am, Ella has been in a serious car accident. She's currently in surgery." Silence. Then, "Surgery? How serious?" "Very serious. Brain trauma, internal injuries. She's fighting for her life." "Oh my God. Which hospital?" "Mass General. She's in OR 3. Okay, we'll figure something out. Thank you for calling." The line went dead. No immediate rush to the hospital. No frantic questions about her condition. Just, "We'll figure something out." Evan stared at his phone in disbelief. He'd seen a lot of family reactions to medical emergencies over the years, but this was a first. Cold didn't begin to cover it. 2 hours later, Beth and Kara finally arrived at the hospital. They found Evan in the surgical waiting area where he'd been pacing for the entire time Ella had been in surgery. "Are you the one who called?" Beth asked, approaching him with the kind of cautious politeness she might use with a stranger. "Yes. Evan Rodriguez. I work with Ella." "How is she?" "Still in surgery. It's been touch and go." Beth nodded, then looked around the waiting area. "This could take a while, couldn't it?" "Yes, it could. Kara has a dress fitting at 2, and I have a luncheon with Trevor's mother. She specifically asked me to come after last night. It's important for Kara's future." Evan stared at her. "Your daughter is in surgery fighting for her life, and you're worried about a dress fitting." "Stepdaughter," Beth corrected automatically. "And yes, this is terrible, but life goes on. Ella would understand. She's always been very practical about these things." Practical. That's what they called it when someone was forced to be understanding about being abandoned. Someone should be here when she wakes up, Evan said carefully. Well, you're here, Kara pointed out, checking her phone. And you know her from work, probably better than we do, honestly. Ella doesn't really talk to us much. Doesn't talk to them much, as if it was Ella's fault. As if she was the one who'd created the distance. I'll call if anything changes, Beth said, already backing toward the elevator. We really do appreciate you letting us know. And just like that, they were gone. Left Ella alone in surgery, alone in her fight for life, with only a coworker who cared more about her well-being than her own family ever had. Evan sat back down in the surgical waiting area and realized something that made his blood run cold. If Ella didn't make it through this surgery, these people would probably be relieved. No more inconvenient daughter to ignore, no more living reminder of their failures as human beings, but Ella was going to make it. Evan was going to make sure of it. And when she woke up, she was going to see what real family looked like, what it meant to have someone fight for you, stay with you, refuse to abandon you, even when things got hard, because that's what love actually was. Not convenience, not obligation, not tolerating someone's existence. Love was showing up. Love was staying. Love was fighting for someone even when they couldn't fight for themselves. And Evan was about to show Ella Carter what that looked like. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of timing, because when Ella Carter finally opened her eyes after 3 days in a medically induced coma, the first person she saw wasn't family. It was Evan slumped in the chair beside her, bed stubble on his face, dark circles under his eyes, holding her hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. Hey there, he said softly when he noticed her eyes flutter open, and his voice was hoarse from exhaustion and relief. Welcome back. Ella tried to speak, but her throat was raw from the breathing tube they'd removed the day before. Evan immediately reached for the cup of ice chips the nurses had left, spooning small pieces into her mouth with infinite patience. Small sips, he murmured. You've been out for a while. As consciousness slowly returned, so did memory. The accident, the surgery, the reason she'd been rushing to work that morning. But more than that, the crushing realization of how her family had reacted to nearly losing her. How long? She managed to whisper. 3 days. You had us scared there for a while. Evan's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. Brain swelling, internal bleeding, broken ribs. But you're tough as nails, Ella Carter. She looked around the room, taking in the flowers Evan had brought, the get-well cards from her coworkers. The evidence that people cared about her recovery. But she didn't see what she was looking for. My family, Evan's expression darkened and he hesitated before answering. They came by, briefly. Beth said they'd check back when you were more alert. The careful way he phrased it told Ella everything she needed to know. They'd fulfilled their obligation, ticked the box marked hospital visit, and gone back to their lives. Evan, Ella said, struggling to sit up, despite the pain shooting through her ribs. I need you to call my father. Your father? Michael Carter. He's working overseas engineering project in Dubai. His number should be in my emergency contacts. Evan frowned. Ella, Beth is listed as your primary emergency contact. There's no Michael Carter in your file. Something cold settled in Ella's stomach. What do you mean he's not listed? He's my father. I called the numbers you had listed. Beth and Kara, that's it. The implications hit Ella like a second truck. How long had it been since she'd updated her emergency contacts? When had Beth convinced her to list her as primary? And more importantly, did her father even know what had happened to her? Evan, I need my phone. Please. He handed it over reluctantly, watching as Ella scrolled through her contacts with shaking fingers. There it was. Dad. Dubai. A number she hadn't called in months. Not because she didn't want to, but because Beth always made her feel guilty about the international charges, always had some reason why bothering Michael with minor problems was selfish. But this wasn't minor. This was her life. The call went straight to voicemail time zones and work schedules, making connection difficult. But Ella left a message, her voice stronger now, determined. Dad, it's Ella. I've been in an accident. I'm in the hospital and I really need to talk to you. Please call me back as soon as you can. I love you." As she hung up, something shifted in Ella's expression. A clarity that had been missing for years, like someone had finally wiped the fog from her glasses. "Evan," she said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. How did my family react when you told them about the accident?" Evan sat back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. "They were concerned." "Evan, they were cold, Ella, colder than I've ever seen anyone react to news like that. Beth asked about your condition, but then immediately started talking about prior commitments. They left after 20 minutes and haven't been back since." The words hit her like physical blows. But strangely, they didn't surprise her. If anything, they confirmed what she'd suspected, but never allowed herself to fully acknowledge. "There's something else," Evan continued, and his voice carried an edge of anger. "When I called Beth to tell her about the accident, her first concern wasn't your health. It was whether you'd be able to help serve breakfast to their house guests." Ella closed her eyes, processing this information. Even when she was potentially dying, their primary concern was how her absence would inconvenience them. "I've been thinking a lot while you were unconscious," Evan said, moving his chair closer to her bed. "About the way they treat you, about the things you've told me about what I witnessed that night I drove you home. Ella, this isn't normal. Families don't treat each other like this." "I know," she whispered, and saying it out loud felt like lifting 1,000-pound weight off her chest. "I think I've always known." Her phone rang, then an international number lighting up the screen. "Michael." "Ella, sweetheart, I just got your message. What happened? Are you okay?" The concern in her father's voice, the immediate urgency, the way he said "sweetheart," like she was the most important thing in his world. It was everything Beth and Kara's reaction hadn't been. "Dad," she said, and started crying. Not from pain, but from relief. "I've been in a car accident. I'm okay now, but I was in surgery and I needed you to know. I'm booking a flight right now. Don't worry about anything. I'll be there as soon as I can." "Have you been alone? Is Beth taking care of you?" Ella looked at Evan, who'd been her only constant companion for 3 days, who'd slept in a hospital chair and made sure the nurses knew exactly what she needed, who'd fought for her when no one else would. "I haven't been alone," she said carefully. "A friend from work has been with me." "Good. That's good. Ella, honey, why didn't Beth call me? Why am I just hearing about this now?" And there it was, the question that would unravel everything. "I don't know, Dad. I listed you in my emergency contacts, but somehow you weren't called." "That's impossible. I always told Beth to call me immediately if anything happened to you, no matter what time it was or where I was in the world. You're my daughter, Ella. You're my priority." After they hung up, Ella stared at her phone for a long time. Michael would be on a plane within hours, crossing oceans to get to her bedside. But Beth couldn't be bothered to stay at the hospital for more than 20 minutes. "Your father sounds like a good man," Evan observed. "He is. He's the best man I know. I just haven't talked to him much lately because..." She trailed off, realizing how Beth had slowly, systematically isolated her from her father. Always making her feel guilty for the expense of international calls, always having reasons why bothering him wasn't necessary, always positioning herself as the intermediary between father and daughter. "Because Beth didn't want you to," Evan finished gently. "Yeah, I think you're right." Over the next 2 days, as Ella recovered and waited for her father's arrival, she started paying attention to things she'd ignored for years. The way Beth answered Michael's calls with updates about everyone except Ella. The way she positioned herself as the family spokesperson, filtering information in and out. The way she'd gradually convinced Ella that her father was too busy, too far away, too burdened to be bothered with her problems. But it was what happened on Thursday afternoon that changed everything. Ella was napping when she heard familiar voices in the hallway outside her room. Beth and her friend Linda, talking in the kind of hushed tones people use when they think they're being discreet, but really aren't. "I can't believe Michael is flying back," Beth was saying. "It's so dramatic. Ella's fine, she's recovering. There was no need for him to interrupt his work." Well, she is his daughter, Linda replied. Barely, Beth snorted. And honestly, Linda, I think this whole situation might work out for the best. Michael's been talking about coming back to the States permanently, and if Ella's recovery takes a while, it might be the perfect excuse to delay that. I've been dreading him coming home. Why? Because Kara's getting married and there are going to be questions about inheritance, about family money, about who gets what. And if Michael really looks into things... Linda's voice dropped even lower. Beth, you can't keep hiding it forever. Hiding what? Ella sat up straighter in her hospital bed, every instinct telling her to listen carefully. You know what? About Kara, about who her real father is. The silence that followed was loaded with 20 years of lies. That's in the past, Linda. Michael loves Kara like his own daughter. He's supported her, paid for her education, treats her exactly like he treats Ella. But she's not his daughter, Beth. And if he ever finds out that you've been letting him pay for everything, letting Kara inherit as if she were his biological child, while his actual daughter gets treated like hired help. Kara is his daughter in every way that matters, Beth said firmly. Biology isn't everything. Maybe not, but inheritance law is pretty clear about biology. And the way you and Kara treat Ella, Michael would be furious if he knew. Michael doesn't need to know anything. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, Ella's never going to say anything. She's too grateful for the roof over her head. Ella's hands were shaking as she reached for her phone, opening the voice recording app just as Linda spoke again. Beth, I'm saying this as your friend. You need to tell Michael the truth before he finds out some other way. DNA tests are everywhere now. One of those ancestry kits, a medical emergency requiring family history, anything could expose this. It won't happen. Besides, even if it did, what's Michael gonna do? Divorce me? Leave Kara with nothing? He's too good a man for that. He'll be hurt, but he'll get over it. And what about Ella? Don't you think she deserves to know that her father has been sending money for her care money, that you've been redirecting to Kara's benefit? Beth's laugh was cold. Ella gets plenty. She has a roof over her head, food to eat. She should be grateful. She works double shifts at the hospital and still comes home to clean your house like a servant, Beth. That's not gratitude, that's exploitation. Ella chooses to help out around the house. No one forces her. Because you've made her feel like she owes you something for existing. That's not normal, and you know it. Ella's finger hovered over the stop button on her recording app, but she kept it running. 26 years of confusion, of feeling like she wasn't enough, of wondering why her family treated her like an outsider. It was all starting to make sense. Look, Beth continued, when Michael gets here, we just need to make sure he sees us as the loving, supportive family we've always been. Ella's accident was tragic, but we've been here for her. We've been taking care of everything. By everything, you mean lying about everything. By everything, I mean protecting my family. Kara is about to marry a man who could set us up for life. Trevor's family has money connections, influence. I'm not going to let some old secret ruin that for her. Even if it means ruining Ella's relationship with her father. Ella's relationship with Michael has always been complicated. She's just not the type of daughter who stays in close touch. She's independent, self-sufficient. She doesn't need him the way Kara needs stability. The recording ran for 10 more minutes, capturing Beth's justifications, her manipulations, her casual dismissal of Ella's worth. When they finally walked away, Ella sat in her hospital bed, staring at her phone, holding evidence that would destroy the family she'd spent her life trying to please. But they weren't. Her family, were they, Beth, had been using Michael's money intended for Ella's care to fund Kara's lifestyle. Kara wasn't even Michael's biological daughter, but she'd been living as his heir while his actual daughter was treated like staff. Ella looked up to find Evan standing in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression that suggested he'd heard at least part of the conversation. "How much of that did you catch?" she asked. "Enough." He set the coffee down and sat on the edge of her bed. Ella, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, be proud of me, because I finally have proof of what I've suspected my whole life, that I was never the problem. They were. That evening, when Beth and Kara came for their daily 5-minute visit, Ella watched them with new eyes. Saw the way they performed concern, the way they checked the boxes of appropriate behavior without any genuine emotion behind it. Oh, how are you feeling today, Ella? Beth asked the same question with the same false concern she'd shown every day. Much better, Ella replied. Actually, I've been thinking a lot while I've been lying here. About family, about honesty, about the importance of truth. Something flickered across Beth's face, but she maintained her mask. Well, that's what hospital stays are for, I suppose. Reflection. I've been reflecting on DNA, actually. Isn't it funny how genetics work? How we inherit traits from our biological parents? How medical histories matter? How blood really does tell the story of who we are? Kara looked up from her phone for the first time since entering the room. What do you mean? Oh, just thinking about family medical history. The doctors have been asking a lot of questions about inherited conditions, genetic predispositions, that sort of thing. Makes you realize how important it is to know where you really come from. Beth's face had gone pale. Well, I should hope you know where you come from, Ella. You're a Carter. Yes, Ella said slowly. I am a Carter, Dad's daughter, his only biological child. The silence that followed was deafening. Kara looked confused, but Beth understood exactly what Ella was implying. I think we should let you rest, Beth said quickly, already moving toward the door. Oh, but I've been resting for days. I'm actually feeling quite energetic. In fact, I think I'm ready for some real conversation. Maybe when Dad gets here tomorrow, we can all sit down and have a nice long talk about family, about truth, about who really belongs where. Beth practically dragged Kara out of the room, leaving Ella alone with the satisfaction of finally holding the power in their relationship. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Landing at Logan at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Can't wait to see you, sweetheart. Ella smiled a real smile for the first time in years. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the truth would finally come out. And for once in her life, Ella Carter was ready to fight for herself. You know what they say about the truth? It doesn't just set you free. Sometimes it burns down everything around you first. And Ella Carter was about to light the biggest fire of her life. That Friday morning, while Beth was probably rehearsing her performance as the loving stepmother for Michael's arrival, Ella was sitting in her hospital bed with Evan transferring files to a USB drive. The recording of Beth and Linda's conversation, screenshots of bank statements she'd managed to access showing payments from Michael's account, going to expenses clearly marked for Kara's benefit, medical records showing discrepancies in family history, and the pièce de résistance, DNA test results. Are you sure about this? Evan asked, watching Ella organize the digital evidence that would destroy the only family she'd ever known. Once you give this to your father, there's no going back. Ella looked up from the laptop they'd borrowed from the hospital's Family Resource Center, her eyes clearer than Evan had ever seen them. Evan, I've spent 26 years going back. Going back to them for approval, going back to fix things I didn't break. Going back to try to earn love from people who were never going to give it. I'm done going back. The DNA test had been surprisingly easy to arrange. A simple cheek swab rushed processing for medical purposes, and 48 hours later, Ella had confirmation of what Beth's conversation had revealed. Kara shared no genetic markers with Michael Carter. 0. She wasn't just not his biological daughter, she wasn't related to him at all. Meanwhile, Ella's test confirmed what she'd always known but somehow been made to doubt Michael Carter was her father. Completely scientifically, undeniably, her father. I keep thinking about all the times Beth made me feel guilty for bothering Dad with my problems, Ella said, saving the final file to the USB. All the times she intercepted his calls, filtered his emails, made me feel like I was being selfish for wanting a relationship with my own father. She wasn't protecting him from burden. She was protecting herself from discovery. Evan watched her work, marveling at the transformation. This wasn't the exhausted, beaten-down woman he'd driven home just a week ago. This was someone who'd found her strength, her voice, her worth. "What about Kara?" he asked gently. "She might not have known?" "You're right. Kara might be just as much a victim of Beth's lies as I am. But she's also 24 years old, Evan. She's had plenty of opportunities to notice that she treats me like garbage while living off my father's generosity. Ignorance stops being an excuse when you choose to stay ignorant." At exactly 2:15 p.m., Michael Carter walked into his daughter's hospital room, and Ella understood why Beth had worked so hard to keep them apart. The man who engulfed her in the gentlest, most careful hug was everything Beth and Kara weren't. Warm, genuine present. Really present. "My beautiful girl," he murmured into her hair, and Ella felt tears she'd been holding back for years finally fall. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner. I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone." "I haven't been alone, Dad. Evan's been taking care of me." Michael turned to Evan with the kind of gratitude that made grown men uncomfortable. "I can't thank you enough for being here for her, for making sure she wasn't abandoned." The word choice was deliberate, and Evan caught it. Abandoned. As if Michael already suspected what Ella was about to confirm. "Dad," Ella said, settling back against her pillows. "I need to show you something. And I need you to know that I love you, and nothing I'm about to share changes that." She handed him the USB drive, watching his face carefully, as she explained what he'd find on it. "I recorded a conversation between Beth and her friend Linda. There are also financial records, DNA test results, and some other documents that I think you need to see." Michael's expression grew more serious as Ella talked, but he didn't interrupt. He just listened the way good fathers do while his daughter told him about 20 years of lies, manipulation, and systematic exclusion from his own money and love. When she finished, Michael was quiet for a long moment, turning the USB drive over in his hands. "How long have you known?" he asked finally. "Suspected years, known for certain." "Since yesterday." "And how long have you been afraid to tell me?" That question broke something open in Ella's chest. "Always, Dad. I've always been afraid that if I complained, if I made trouble, I'd lose you completely." Beth made sure I understood that my place in the family was conditional, that I was lucky to have a place at all. Michael's face went through several expressions. Hurt anger, and finally a cold determination that reminded Ella exactly where she'd gotten her own strength. "Ella, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are my daughter. You are not conditional. You are not lucky to have a place in my life. You are my life. You are the reason I work so hard, the reason I send money home, the reason I've been planning to come back to the States permanently. Everything I've built, everything I've earned has been for you." "Dad, let me finish. I've been in Dubai for 2 years, taking on the highest paying projects I could find because I wanted to set up a trust fund for your future. I wanted to make sure you'd never have to worry about money, never have to depend on anyone. That money I've been sending home, it was supposed to ensure you could pursue whatever dreams you had without financial stress." Ella felt the room spinning slightly. "What money?" "I've been sending home $4,000 a month for the past 18 months. Ella. Specifically for your living expenses, your student loans, your future. Beth told me you were too proud to take money directly from me, so she said she'd handle it discreetly. Make sure you were comfortable without making you feel like charity. $4,000 a month. $72,000. Ella thought about her studio apartment with the broken heating, her student loan payments that kept her up at night the way she had to budget every grocery trip. "Dad, I haven't seen a penny of that money." The silence that followed was dangerous. Michael Carter was an engineer, a problem solver, a man who built bridges and fixed things that were broken. But the look in his eyes suggested he was about to tear something down instead of building it up. "Show me the recordings," he said quietly. They spent the next hour going through everything on the USB drive. Michael listened to Beth's conversation with Linda with an expression that grew stonier with each revelation. He studied the financial records that showed his money funding Kara's lifestyle while his daughter worked double shifts. He stared at the DNA results for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. 20 years. She's been lying to me for 20 years. Dad, I'm sorry. I know this hurts. Don't you dare apologize, Ella. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. He stood up, pacing the small hospital room like a caged animal. All this time, I thought I was supporting my family. I thought the distance you'd created was natural, normal for a young woman finding her independence. Beth told me you were thriving, that you didn't need much contact with your old dad. I never wanted distance, Dad. I wanted you. I've always wanted you. Michael stopped pacing and looked at his daughter, really looked at her, saw the exhaustion that went deeper than her recent injuries, the sadness she'd been carrying for years, the way she'd learned to make herself small to avoid disappointing people. I'm going home, he said finally. I'm going to have a conversation with Beth and Kara, and then I'm going to fix this. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do, because I'm your father and protecting you is my job. A job I've apparently been failing at for years. Evan, who'd been quietly observing this reunion, finally spoke up. Mr. Carter, maybe I should drive you. You seem pretty angry, and Boston traffic can be tricky when you're emotional. Michael looked at Evan with new respect. You're a good man, Evan. Thank you. And yes, I think that's a wise idea. As they prepared to leave, Michael kissed Ella's forehead and made her a promise that sent chills down her spine. This ends today, sweetheart. All of it. When I come back, things are going to be very different. The confrontation at the house was everything Ella had imagined and more. Michael walked in to find Beth and Kara in the living room, the same living room Ella had spent last weekend cleaning for people who wouldn't acknowledge her existence. Beth's face lit up when she saw him, the perfect performance of a loving wife welcoming her husband home from a difficult trip. Michael, you're early. How's Ella? We've been so worried. Have you... Michael's voice was calm, conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. Because I've just spent the afternoon learning some very interesting things about how worried you've actually been. He set the USB drive on the coffee table between them, the small device somehow taking up all the space in the room. What's that? Kara asked, looking up from her phone for the first time. Evidence, Michael said simply. Evidence of 20 years of lies, manipulation, and fraud. Beth's face went white. Michael, whatever Ella has told you. Ella didn't tell me anything, Beth. You did, in your own words recorded in the hospital hallway where you thought no one was listening. He clicked play on his phone, and Beth's voice filled the room, barely. And honestly, Linda, I think this whole situation might work out for the best. As the recording played, Michael watched his wife's face crumble, and his stepdaughter slowly realized that her entire life was built on lies. When it ended, the silence was suffocating. 20 years, Michael said again. 20 years of you taking money I sent for Ella and using it for Kara. 20 years of you isolating my daughter from me, making her feel unwelcome in her own home, treating her like hired help. 20 years of lying about Kara's paternity, while letting her live as my heir. Michael, please let me explain. Explain what, Beth? Explain how you convinced my daughter that she was lucky to have a roof over her head, while you used my money to fund your daughter's shopping sprees. Explain how you made Ella feel guilty for wanting a relationship with her own father. Kara found her voice then shrill and desperate. Daddy, I didn't know. I thought you were my real father. I thought... Don't, Michael's voice cut through her protests like a blade. Don't call me Daddy, Kara. According to the DNA test Ella ran, we share no genetic material whatsoever. You're not my daughter, you've never been my daughter, and I've spent $250,000 raising someone else's child, while my actual daughter lived like a stranger in her own home. The number hit the room like a bomb. $250,000. College tuition, cars, clothes, vacations, the upcoming wedding, all of it funded by money intended for Ella. I can pay you back, Kara said frantically. Trevor and I will pay you back everything. With what money, Kara? You've never worked a day in your life. You've never paid for anything yourself. And Trevor's going to run as fast as he can when he finds out his fiance's trust fund was built on fraud. Beth finally found her voice, but it came out as a whisper. What are you going to do? Michael looked around the living room, at the expensive furniture, the art, the perfect life that had been built on his daughter's suffering. I'm filing for divorce. Immediately. This house goes on the market, and any proceeds go into a trust for Ella. Money that should have been hers all along. Kara, you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Beth, you have 60 days to find a job and an apartment because the gravy train just derailed. Michael, please. Beth begged. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Marriage is about forgiveness. Marriage is about trust, Beth, and honesty, and putting your spouse's children first, not treating them like inconveniences. You want to talk about forgiveness. Ask Ella. Ask her to forgive you for stealing 20 years of her relationship with her father. Ask her to forgive you for making her feel worthless while you spent her inheritance on someone else's child. He picked up the USB drive and headed toward the door, leaving Beth and Kara in the wreckage of their lies. Where are you going? Beth called after him. Back to the hospital. Back to my daughter, my real daughter, the one who's been working double shifts to pay for nursing school while you've been using her college fund to pay for wedding dresses. As Michael and Evan drove back to the hospital, Michael was quiet for most of the journey. Finally, he spoke. Evan, can I ask you something? Of course. What are your intentions with my daughter? Evan almost smiled. Even in the middle of blowing up his own life, Michael Carter was being a father. Honestly, sir, I'm hoping to convince her that she deserves to be loved. Really loved. By someone who sees her value and never takes it for granted. Good answer, Michael said. Good answer. Back at the hospital, Ella was waiting. She didn't ask about the confrontation, didn't demand details about the explosion she'd caused. She just looked at her father and said, "Are you okay?" And Michael realized that his daughter, who'd just discovered she'd been systematically robbed and emotionally abused for 2 decades, was worried about his feelings. Still, putting everyone else first, still taking care of everyone but herself. I'm better than I've been in years, he told her honestly. Because I finally know the truth. And now we can start over. Really start over as the family we should have been all along. What happens now? Ella asked. Now you recover. Now you let people take care of you for a change. Now you start accepting that you deserve good things, not because you've earned them, but because you exist and you're precious. He sat down beside her bed and took her hand. And now, we figure out what you want your life to look like, sweetheart. Because for the first time in 20 years, it's completely up to you. For the first time in her adult life, Ella Carter was truly free. You know what healing looks like? It's not a dramatic transformation or a movie montage. It's small moments. It's waking up in a place where you're wanted. It's someone asking how you slept and actually waiting for the answer. It's the radical concept of being cared for without having to earn it first. 3 weeks after the confrontation that changed everything, Ella Carter was living in a downtown Boston apartment with her father. A real apartment with granite countertops and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Not because she'd worked herself to exhaustion to deserve it, but because Michael Carter wanted his daughter to be comfortable while she recovered. This feels too expensive, Ella had protested when he'd first shown her the place. Michael had replied gently, I've been saving money for your future for 18 years. Money that should have been making your life easier all along. Let me do this. Let me be your father. Learning to be someone's daughter again was harder than Ella had expected. She kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the list of expectations, for the price tag attached to love. But it never came. Michael would make her breakfast and leave little notes when he went to work. Proud of you for resting today, or don't forget you're amazing. the kind of unconditional support she'd spent years believing she didn't deserve. And then there was Evan. Evan, who visited every day after his shifts, bringing coffee that was actually good and stories that made her laugh. Evan, who never once made her feel guilty for the chaos her family drama had created in his life. Evan, who looked at her like she was precious instead of convenient. "You know," he said one Thursday evening, sitting in the chair beside her bed, in what had become his unofficial spot, "I've been thinking about what you said in the hospital, about not being anyone's first choice." Ella looked up from the book she'd been reading, the first book she'd had time to read for pleasure in years. "What about it? I want you to know that you're my first choice, Ella. Not my backup plan, not my convenient option. My first choice for everything." The way he said it, like it was the most natural thing in the world, made Ella's chest tight with emotion. She was still learning to process. "Evan, I know it's complicated right now. I know you're still figuring out who you are when you're not constantly trying to please people who can't be pleased, but I want you to know that I see you, the real you, and I'm not going anywhere." That's when Ella started crying. Not sad tears, but the overwhelmed tears of someone who'd spent so long in the desert that the first taste of water felt impossible. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to be someone's priority." "Then we'll figure it out together," Evan said simply. "We've got time." Time. When was the last time Ella had felt like she had time? Time to heal, time to think, time to discover what she actually wanted instead of what everyone else needed from her. The following Friday, something beautiful happened. The ICU staff at Mass General threw Ella a welcome back party. Not a big elaborate affair, but a genuine celebration in the break room with cake from the good bakery and balloons that said, "We missed you." "Speech," called out Janet, the head nurse, who'd become something of a mother figure to Ella over the years. "Oh, I don't think—" "Come on, Carter," laughed Dr. Williams, one of the attending physicians. "You survived a truckocoma and family drama that sounds like a soap opera. The least you can do is give us a few words." Ella stood up slowly, still getting used to being the center of positive attention, and looked around at these people who'd been more family to her than her actual family had ever been. "I just want to say thank you," she began, her voice stronger than she'd expected. "Not just for this party, but for being the kind of people who show up, who stay, who make someone feel like they matter." She looked directly at Evan, who was leaning against the wall with an expression of pure pride. "I spent a lot of years thinking that love was something you had to earn, that acceptance was conditional, that asking for help was selfish. But you all taught me something different. You taught me that real family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choice. It's about people who choose to care about your well-being, who choose to celebrate your victories, who choose to stay when things get hard." The room was quiet, everyone understanding that they were witnessing something significant, not just a recovery, but a rebirth. "So thank you for choosing me," Ella continued. "Thank you for showing me what I was worth before I knew it myself." "Oh, Evan stepped forward, then raising his coffee cup like a toast. "To Ella Carter," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "who teaches us every day that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up even when the people who should help you are the ones who pushed you down in the first place." The room erupted in applause and affection, and for the first time in her life, Ella felt what it was like to be genuinely celebrated. Not for what she could do for others, but for who she was. Later that evening, as Ella and Evan walked along the harbor near her new apartment, Ella's phone buzzed with an unknown number, a text message that made her stop walking. "It's from Beth," she told Evan, showing him the screen. "What does it say? She wants to meet. Says she has things to explain, wants to make amends. Says she's sorry and hopes we can work things out." Evan studied Ella's face carefully. "What do you want to do?" Ella looked at the message for a long moment, thinking about the woman who'd spent 20 years making her feel small, unwanted, grateful for scraps of affection. "I want to delete it," she said finally. I want to delete it and never look back. Then delete it? Is that horrible? Should I give her a chance to explain? Evan stopped walking and turned to face her fully. Ella, that woman had 20 years to explain, 20 years to treat you with basic human decency, 20 years to be honest with your father. She chose not to take any of those chances. But no buts. You don't owe her forgiveness. You don't owe her a conversation. You don't owe her anything. The only person you owe anything to is yourself. Ella looked at the message one more time, then deleted it without reading Beth's follow-up texts. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. You know what's funny? She said as they continued walking. 6 months ago, I would have met with her. I would have listened to her explanations, probably ended up comforting her, maybe even apologizing for causing trouble. And now I know that my peace of mind is worth more than her comfort, that protecting myself isn't selfish, it's necessary. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights reflecting off the water, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the cobblestones. Evan, Ella said suddenly, I need to tell you something. Okay, I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I already have fallen in love with you. And that terrifies me because I've never been in love with someone who loves me back and I don't know the rules for that. Evan stopped walking again this time with a smile that could have powered the entire harbor. Well, he said, reaching for her hands, lucky for you, I'm falling in love with you too. Have been for months actually, and the rules are pretty simple. What are they? Be honest, be present, choose each other every day, and remember that love isn't something you have to earn. It's something you give and receive freely. He leaned down and kissed her. Then right there on the harbor walk with the city sparkling around them and the future stretching out like an open road. When they broke apart, Ella realized something that made her laugh out loud. What's so funny? Evan asked. I just realized that Beth actually did me a favor. All those years of treating me badly, of making me feel worthless. They taught me to recognize real love when I finally found it. If I'd grown up feeling entitled to kindness, I might have taken this for granted. Ella Carter, Evan said, shaking his head in amazement. You are the strongest person I know. No, she replied, squeezing his hands. I'm just someone who finally learned the difference between being strong for other people and being strong for myself. 6 months later, Michael Carter walked his daughter down the aisle at a small ceremony in the hospital chapel, where Ella and Evan had first found each other. Not because Ella needed to be given away, but because she wanted to honor the father who'd fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. Beth and Kara weren't invited. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Ella had learned that forgiveness didn't require giving people access to hurt you again. As Evan and Ella exchanged vows, they'd written themselves promising to choose each other every day, to build a family based on love instead of obligation, to never make each other earn basic respect. There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. And when they kissed as husband and wife, surrounded by the people who'd chosen to love them, Ella finally understood what home felt like. It felt like being seen. It felt like being valued. It felt like never having to apologize for existing. It felt like love, real, the kind that doesn't ask you to be smaller, quieter, more grateful. The kind that says, you are enough exactly as you are. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't your real family. Sometimes your real family is the paramedic who stays by your hospital bed, the father who crosses oceans to fight for you, the coworkers who celebrate your victories like they're their own. Sometimes love comes disguised as a medical emergency, a moment of crisis that strips away all the pretense and shows you who really cares. And sometimes, just sometimes, the worst thing that ever happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. Because sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find everything you actually needed. Ella Carter learned that truth doesn't always set you free immediately. Sometimes it burns everything down first. But from those ashes, if you're brave enough to let people love you, you can build something beautiful, something real, something chosen, something that lasts, and that friends is how you save yourself. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most teach us the most about what real love looks like. If Ella's story touched you, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? Your story matters too, and I'd love to hear it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.